this is Brannon, and I'm here with Michael Stal, Principal Engineer at Siemens AG Corporate Research and Technology Division. He's also a guest editor of the Architecture Sustainability issue of IEEE Software. Michael, how are you today?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Great, thank you for being on this call for IEEE Software. Could you tell me a little bit about your experiences with architecture sustainability?
So basically, I'm an architect at Siemens, and I'm also responsible for the certification of senior and software architects at Siemens. And therefore, I've experienced a lot of architecture sustainability issues in different projects. So for instance, projects that last for 10 years got architectures that would not be maintainable anymore, or parts of an architecture must be redeveloped, but people did not know the architecture. So there were some problems in different projects regarding this kind of architecture sustainability. So it began from people who don't care about architecture, they just do the architecture, and then comes the implementation, and then comes another part of the architecture, and then comes another part of the implementation. And they never check whether the architecture is still in the right shape. So that's a real problem, because if you're waiting too long, then in such projects, then there will be one decision based on another decision, which is based on another decision. And if one of these decisions in the chain is wrong or has some issues, then you get a really big problem. So that's the reason why we have introduced at Siemens refactoring, which means people are supposed to check after each iteration whether their architecture is still the right one and whether implementations are still in sync with the architecture design. And so that's one point. And another point where we had trouble was basically I have an old system, but I must connect it to a new system. And how do I really restructure or renovate the architecture so that both architecture can really communicate with each other or can be integrated with each other? So that's a second point. And a third point, which we also recognized were architectures that we could not just throw away. For instance, if you have a power plant and any of these big embedded devices, for instance, that last for 10, 20, or 30 years, you cannot just forget this architecture. You need to really make sure that it is able to be maintained on a very long time period. That's the point where sustainability became a real big issue. If you don't do anything for architecture sustainability, the costs will be high, and the technical issues will also be high. And that's the point why we at Siemens have experienced projects that led to very high costs exactly for that reason. So it's not only a technical issue, it's also something which is really strongly related to business and business success. So that's basically my point on architecture sustainability, why it's important, and why we are really educating this kind of architecture sustainability, the different kinds, renovating, re-architecting, or refactoring to our architects, which we educate and certificate. And that's the reason why we hopefully, and we do really have better projects now, which less costs, with less technical debt, for instance, or with technical debt that can be easily paid back. And that's a very important point if you are going to develop products which must be available or must be released in a few months or in a very short time frame. So it's very important to make sure that the architecture backbone is still very stable, very sound, and has a high quality.
Yeah, it sounds like it has to be a team effort for it to work.
Yes, absolutely. So it will not work if only, for instance, the architects try to care for architecture sustainability. you also must enforce that developers are really do architecture sustainability and really try hard to don't have any architectural drift between their implementation and the architecture design. So there's a close communication between development and architects, but also between architects and project management or some product management, project management, all of these levels, because they are the ones who are really responsible for the budget and for the time planning. So they must really be heavily involved in all of these activities.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for all the good work you did on putting this special issue together on architecture sustainability, and that's going to be our November-December issue of IEEE software.
So thank you for having me, and I wish you a very nice time, and thank you for the interview.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you very much.